Good evening, Internet. Welcome back to another night of Talks About Books for probably far too long. I'm It's Aldous in the background. Tonight we're going to be talking about Acceptance. This is the third book. Can I get it? There we go. This is the third book in the Southern Reach trilogy. This book offers a lot of connective tissue to the other books. So I'm going to try to make connections back to the other books as I go through it. Starting with the prologue, we get to meet up with the director directly after the final confrontation in Annihilation. The director is Cynthia / Gloria. She has seen the biologist, but the biologist is not the biologist anymore. She is filled with this brightness that she can't explain, this alien infection that is colonizing her from within. The director dies there on the beach beneath the lighthouse, but then she starts flying through the air, kind of in the same way that Lowry did in the video that we saw in Book 2, Authority. The first book or part of Acceptance is called Range Light. We start off with the lighthouse keeper. This is a flashback to when Saul, the lighthouse keeper, was still working at the lighthouse and Gloria was still a child. We get to see a little bit about the Seance and Science Brigade with two of their members, maybe Henry and Suzanne. Saul is in a relationship with a man named Charlie, who's a fisherman in the local village. He is a former preacher. I think that they mentioned that in Authority, that he was a former preacher. We meet Henry and Suzanne from the Seance and Science Brigade. Henry and Suzanne are they creep Saul out for some reason. They seem to... something in their movements, something in the way that they talk. They always seem to be getting on his nerve. And they have a permit to study the lights, the lens at the top of the lighthouse. But they're always showing up unannounced. They're lugging heavy equipment in. They're studying this lens. They're doing strange things at night. Saul is a little bit freaked out by them. We got to learn a little bit about the lens in Authority. It was specially made so that it could direct light in any direction in multiple different beam sizes and directions. It seems very complicated and complex. We will learn later why the Seance and Science Brigade is particularly interested in it. We get to meet young Gloria, the director herself. She is a child at this time, and she is, her mom is not always there. Her mom kind of works as a doctor, but she has some bad history. And so she's been exiled to the small town where she has to make her own way amongst people that are poor and not super well taken care of. Gloria calls Saul the Keeper of the Light, which is an interesting nickname for him. We also know that the lens from the lighthouse was originally stationed on a place called Failure Island. It was a lighthouse. There was a lighthouse on this island that ended up not being very successful. And so they moved the lens from that lighthouse over to a twin lighthouse on the mainland. And so now it's called Failure Island because it wasn't successful. And that appears to be where the Seance and Science Brigade have made their base. One day, Saul notices something glinting in the grass beneath a plant at the bottom of the lighthouse. He sees this strange object / this strange flower, and he bends down to pick up whatever is in the grass, whatever is beneath this plant, and it seems to prick his thumb through his gloves and imprint something on him, which is weird because it's not a physical imprinting. It didn't rip through his glove and poke into his finger, but there's some invisible puncture in his being, which is going to evolve throughout the story. Chapter 2 is Ghostbird. Ghostbird, if you remember, is the doppelganger of the biologist. Ghostbird returned to our world, the world outside of Area X. She was picked up at this vacant lot. She has formed a relationship with Control over the course of authority. Control seems oddly drawn to her. Like, he is trying to stay in control. He's trying to maintain his authority. But something about her has like this gravitational pull, and he just like wants to be with her. But she is kind of like not rejecting him outright, but like soft rejecting him. Like, let's maintain our boundaries. Like, let's keep a boundary between the two of us. And he kind of like takes a step back and is like trying to be, he's not taking it well. He's trying to be a person, but he is also trying to like maintain Ghostbird's orbit. Control also appears to have his own brightness now that they have come through this portal back into Area X. He has some kind of infection within himself as well. Ghostbird can see it. She says that he's like lit up like a flame. They find surveyor's markers, and they follow these surveyor's markers, and they find this moaning creature in the reeds. This is the same creature from Annihilation. Now that they can like get up close to it because it is like dying, it has aged it has aged, and it is dying of old age, and it is dying in the reeds. They can get up close to it, and they can see that it has the face of the psychologist from the 12th expedition, which is the same one that the biologist husband was on. So the or the 11th, that's it. The psychologist from the 11th expedition has become this creature somehow. And Ghostbird says that she thinks that this creature in particular was a mistake of Area X. A lot of the changes that Area X has made in people, a lot of the transformations that it's induced in people have been very elegant. You can turn a person into a bird. You can turn a person into a dolphin. You can turn a person into a hog. Why would you turn the psychologist into this moaning, bestial thing? We will get a little bit more information on that in the future, but it's never like spelled out for us. Chapter 3 is the director. This is pre-Annihilation, but post Saul's chapters. So we're jumping back in time. Time within this novel is not linear, unfortunately. Makes our job of like interpreting the book a little bit harder. It is also like, I think that it works well for the flow of the book. Authority is very tedious to get through. There's a lot of like wrestling with John Rodriguez as he tries to maintain control. In this book, the jumping back and forth and getting these separate timelines, it kind of helps keep things fresh. The director visits Chipper Star Lanes. This is a bowling alley with mini golf that also has a bar attached to it. Saul also takes Charlie to Chipper Star Lanes at one point. So this is someplace near Headley and near the small town from the Area X. The director has been reading Whitby's documents. She has been fighting with Lowry. She has a small like hideout on the roof of the Southern Reach building where her and Grace go up and drink and they talk. She is getting desperate because she doesn't feel like any movement is happening, and she's convinced that the border of Area X is going to expand, which we know from Authority that it is eventually going to expand. So she comes up with a plan. She is going to take Whitby and she is going to go across the border. And we heard about this happening in Authority, but now we actually get to see it. Something interesting is that the director refers to the topographical anomaly as the tower before we ever get the biologist calling it the tower. So it seems like the director, in her mind, when she was maybe a child, she came up with the tower as a way to refer to the lighthouse. And then now that she is like older, she is taking that and she is transferring the tower onto this topographical anomaly. So we get a little bit of an origin story. It doesn't matter in the grand scheme of things, but it is like one of those things that I noticed on rereading. The director also remembers Saul. We will find out later that one of the last things that Saul said to Gloria as a child was, "Don't forget about me." And the director never did. Chapter 4, we flash back to Saul. There is a fire on Failure Island, and he's trying to look at it through a telescope at the top of the lighthouse. I think that Gloria and Henry and Suzanne are all trying to get a good look at it. This is kind of like the inciting incident of this chapter. While they are up in the lighthouse, Saul notices that there is a small crack at the bottom of the lighthouse lens, and there are some glass shards on the floor beneath the lens. If this has been around for a while, this could explain the shard of something that entered into Saul's hand. If there was something in the lens that was freed by the Seance and Science Brigade and then fell into the grass or beneath the plant at the bottom of the lighthouse, that could explain what got into Saul's fingers. We never get like a real explanation. We never get confirmation of that, but it is something that could be an explanation. Suzanne wants to take a picture in front of the lighthouse. Saul, his assistant Brad, and then Gloria are the three subjects of the photo. So Saul kind of puts on his old captain's hat and he gives a scowl. Saul thinks in his head, "I don't know why it feels like I'm putting on a disguise, but it feels like I'm putting on a disguise." Brad gives like a chipper smile, and Gloria, wanting to be kind of defiant, she climbs up a hill in the background. She pulls her coat over her so that she's harder to recognize. And the three of them get this picture taken of them, which will later appear in Authority and which we will later see within Acceptance. Chapter 5 is a control chapter. We get John Rodriguez's perspective on things again. He is dealing with the aftershocks of Lowry's hypnosis. He still feels Lowry in his head somehow. He has been clutching Whitby's papers, the terroir documents from Authority, and he's been trying to read them as a comfort blanket. Something interesting to note about the terroir papers is that Whitby never wrote about doppelgangers, which we will find out later is interesting because Whitby may himself be a doppelganger. Control describes his pull towards Ghostbird. He says that he is caught up in her orbit and he wants to be close to her, but she's given him this back off signal and he's trying to respect it. Ghostbird says that natural places are no different than human cities. Ghostbird seems invested in breaking down this dichotomy between human civilization and nature. Humans are part of nature. Humans are animals. This is something that we'll see later from the biologist during her intake with the director. Control, not Whitby. Control is thinking about the things that the Southern Reach and Central have left out of their narratives. He says that every omission left some sign of its presence. In the sky, they see a weird creature, very large, that appears to be like streamers floating through the air, and it makes a terrible noise. They're not sure what this creature is or what it's supposed to be, but it's another one of those strange creatures created by Area X, and it's unnerving. Um, Chapter 6 is the director again. It describes the journey into Area X with Whitby. They find the director's old house, but she doesn't want to confide in Whitby that this is her house. And so Whitby is kind of like freaked out. He's like, why are we here? And she doesn't really give him a good explanation for it. But this is where she lived when she was still Gloria, and now that she's Cynthia, she is revisiting it and kind of working through her feelings. It's one of those, like, you can't go home again because home is always changing. Hey guys, editing Andrew here. I just wanted to say that I forgot that this is also the section where we see Saul through Cynthia's eyes. Cynthia sees Saul on the steps in the tower, and he looks up at her and says that, don't forget about me. We will later find out that this is not Saul. This is the crawler, who may be Saul's brain or Saul transformed or something of that nature. But this is currently the crawler and not Saul proper. Chapter 7, Saul kind of like reflects on his old life as a preacher. In the past, he has suffered from apocalyptic visions, which kind of seep their way into his preachings. And part of the reason why he stopped being a preacher is because of this lack of passion and these visions that he is suffering from. And so as he is starting to develop this like low-level fever from the shard that went into his finger, he is starting to like feel different, and he's starting to reflect on this past of his as a preacher. Gloria is the one who convinces him to go see her mother, the doctor. Gloria looks at him one day and just says, "You're different." And he says, "Well, I suppose I am. I suppose I should go check something." He uses the word infestation, but Gloria's mother just kind of says, it's probably stress. It's probably overworking. It's probably like a low-level fever. Take some medicine, sleep it off. It's nothing to be concerned about. He has this sense that something distant had come close from far away, is the quote from the book. He is on his way back to the lighthouse. He is not supposed to sleep when the lighthouse is active, but he finds himself waking from a dream as the lighthouse is like spinning overhead. And he goes to like sit and watch the light, and he starts to develop this sermon in his head, which we will see again in the tower in Annihilation, and which we will see again behind the director's door in Authority. Chapter 8 is another Ghostbird chapter. They find a site where there is like an overturned car. It seems to be like mass disarray. She is looking through old junk, and they find an old boat. Ghostbird is reminded of the biologist's husband sailing off for the island. She wonders if this might have been his boat. They make up their mind that they're going to take this boat and they are going to go to the second island. There is something in the water, but they make a good team. They are able to row the boat across to Failure Island. They find the second lighthouse. It looks like it also is weathered and old and might be falling apart. But they look up at the landing and they say that it will probably support their wait for the night if they want to camp out there. But then they hear something. And while they are like looking around trying to find out what is the source of the sound, they find the assistant director from Authority, Grace Stevenson. Chapter 9. This is another director chapter. The director, having returned from Area X, is caught by Central. She is taken out to Lowry's estate. Lowry has built a replica, like a small small scale replica of Area X. He has the lighthouse. He has the tower. He has the base camp area so that he can go and he can like walk around his Area X. The director is looking out the window. She sees it. Lowry is like, let me make you a drink. And she's like, no, I'd rather not. And he's like, okay, well, I'll just make it for you just to stay in practice. And he's making the drink and talking to her and kind of like ramping up. It's an escalation. And then when he finishes the drink, he like throws it at the wall, just like beside her head, and it shatters, and she can feel the wetness of the drink like against her neck, and she can feel like the glass at her feet. And he's like, why don't you tell me what the fuck you were thinking? He brings in a familiar character, John Rodriguez's mother, Jackie Severance. Jackie Severance is like trying to sweet talk the director. She's like, between us girls, what were you thinking? Like, what did you find? What was happening out there? The director has her story straight. She kind of like does not give anything away to either Lowry or to Jackie Severance. And so they come up with a deal where she will return to the Southern Reach. However, she will be under both Lowry's and Jackie Severance's thumbs while she is acting director of Southern Reach. The director has a flashback to being within Area X, where she talks about finding Whitby in the lighthouse. He saw a vision of himself on the stairs. He chased the vision of himself up the stairs, found the trapdoor in the lighthouse that leads to this little pit full of journals that we've seen in Annihilation. He followed the doppelganger into this pit, and there, two men entered, two Whitbys entered, one Whitby walked out. We may never know whether the one that walked out is the real Whitby or the Whitby doppelganger. The director never finds the Whitby doppelganger. So was there a Whitby doppelganger? Is this the Whitby doppelganger? We don't know. We don't really get a lot of straight answers. It's possible that he was a doppelganger. It is weird that when he wrote his terroir document, he never talked about doppelgangers. While they were in Area X, they found this cell phone, which comes back again in Authority, and they found the plant at the bottom of the lighthouse. This is the same plant from Authority that never dies. They take these back to the Southern Reach building. They store them in the chapel, in the specimens room. These will be recurring themes throughout the book. In the next chapter, we get Control again. Control wakes up Grace, the assistant director. She has her boot kind of on Control's face, and she is reading through Whitby's terroir documents, the ones that Control was able to take through the doorway with him. Control uses Grace's name, trying to appeal to her, and she gets very upset. She's like, don't use my name in here. Don't ever use any names in here. Like, we don't want them to understand. We don't want them to know who I am. And he's like, who's that? Who are you talking about? And she's like, shouldn't you fucking know that? She knows that he is undergoing withdrawal from Lowry's hypnosis. She can kind of see it on him. But he insists, no, I'm okay. I'm me now. I'm not following Lowry's programming. I'm me. I'm just acting as my own order. Grace asks, how long has it been for you? How long has it been since the Southern Reach fell to Area X? And he says 2 weeks. And he asks her, what happened to the director's doppelganger? We saw the director's doppelganger at the end of Authority. The director's doppelganger was coming back towards the Southern Reach building. It was her and Grace and Whitby sitting in the director's office. What happened to the director's doppelganger? And Grace says, well, I shot her because I determined that she was no longer the director. Ghostbird asks Grace, have you seen the biologist? And Grace is like, oh, you bet I've seen the biologist. You don't even know what I've seen. And Ghostbird is like, well, tell me about it. Like, what have you seen? And Grace has the second journal of the biologist. She kind of tosses it at Ghostbird. And Grace is like, for you, it's been 2 weeks. For me, it's been 3 years. A lot has changed in that time. The second part of the novel, part 2, Fixed Light, you may notice a light theme between the first 2 chapters, Range Light and Fixed Light. The second biologist journal tells the story of the biologist dealing with the brightness. She hears the moaning creature out in the reeds, the same one that we have seen as Control and as Ghostbird. We've seen this thing. The biologist saw it as well. She knows that this creature is not right. It's not like the right way to recreate a creature. And so she determines that she is not going to be changed. Whatever brightness is within her, she is going to refuse it for as long as possible. She makes her way out to the island looking for her husband. She kind of finds him. On this island, there is an owl, and this owl works in strange ways. It leaves her offerings. It comes close to her. It doesn't fly away when she approaches it. It seems to work in a way that might betray a more human intelligence. And she can't say definitively that it is her husband, but she also can't say definitively that it's not. And that ambiguity between what is and what is not. That's one of those things that comes up again and again throughout the Southern Reach series. Is it her husband? Is it not her husband? Is it Area X fucking with her? Is it possible that it's been reconstituted from her husband somehow? The world may never know. She finds on the island a camp for the SNSB. There is no indication what the SNSB is. She does not know it as the Seance and Science Brigade. So she dubs it the Seeker and Surveillance Bandits. This is kind of like a comment on like people assigning meaning to things and getting it wrong, but having the right idea about it. We as the audience know that it is the Seance and Science Brigade, and we know roughly what they are, but her from within the island, she cannot get the same information that we have. So she assigns meaning to it, even though that meaning is like imprecise. Yeah, the limits of knowledge. There is reflection on her time spent on the island. Her owl companion passes away one day, and she realizes that she cannot keep the transformation off forever. And at the end of the part, she says that she has been on this island for about 30 years now. So it has been less than a year since Annihilation happened for us, but it's been 30 years on this island for the biologist. So there is some kind of time dilation going on, not even just within the book as like the way it's written, but between Area X and outside of Area X, there's a time dilation that is moving in vastly different ways. Part 3, we get another light, occulting light. We have a trilogy of lights. In this one, we start off with chapter 11, Ghostbird. Ghostbird gets to learn about her haunted twin, is the word that she uses. She knows that there is a light at the bottom of the tower. She determines that that is probably where they should go, because that's where they'll have the best chance of either escaping Area X or figuring out like the mystery. Control realizes that they are not on Earth. Grace kind of like pushes back on that. She's like, there's something going on here, but we don't know anything about like what is actually happening. There's discussion between the three of them, but the thing that like stands out is that there's time dilation, and Control is like, how did we not realize this before? And Grace is like, well, we were only sending expeditions in for like weeks at a time. We were never sending them in here for years. We've never sent them in here for like an extended period of time. So how would we know about this time dilation? Um, There's discussion about a wormhole. It's possible that there is a wormhole that has opened up somewhere on Earth, and that is sending them to Area X somewhere else in the universe. The thesis statement of the book is here. You can know the what of something forever and never know the why. And this is probably like the thesis statement of the book. We can like figure out some of it. We can see some of it. We get these different perspectives. We get these different fragmented like drops of knowledge, but we may never see the whole picture. We have these limitations of the way that we experience things, of the way that we know things, of the way that we attain knowledge. There are limits on what we can and can't understand. They are walking back towards the boat, and Control is talking, and he's kind of unraveling a little bit with this knowledge that they might not be on Earth, that they might have traveled through a wormhole, that there is stuff happening that they cannot control. And the biologist, Ghostbird, she like stops him and she gives him a hug. And at first he's like resistant to it. He tries to like pull away from her, but then he kind of like breaks down crying because, you know, human emotions are messy. And he kind of breaks down crying in her arms. She holds him until he stops crying, and then she lets go of him, and then he stands up and he regains his composure, and then the three of them continue on. We get to see, or at least we get to hear of, the new biologist. The biologist has gone through her transformation. She is now something that has never existed on Earth before. She is an amphibious creature that moves from the ocean to the island and tries to enter the lighthouse, but she is now massive. She is much too big to do that. The thing that Control and Ghostbird both kind of fixate on are these eyes. They are the eyes of the biologist, but there are too many of them, and they seem to be like spread out all over her head. So it's not like my eyes like looking at you. It's like a creature, maybe a spider, having like multiple rows of human eyes like staring out at you. So picture that in your head. We have a flashback in the next chapter to Saul. Saul is experiencing all of these different apocalyptic visions in his head. He awakes in the middle of the night to a sound in the lighthouse. He looks up and he realizes that the lighthouse is off. He goes up into the lens room of the lighthouse, and he finds Suzanne, Henry, and a woman with a scarf that is kind of conducting some kind of ritual. We know from authority that Jackie Severance has a penchant for scarves. She's always wearing scarves, and so that's her like character identifier. So there's a high chance, a high likelihood that this woman who is working with Henry and Suzanne is Jackie Severance. Why? Remains to be seen. Suzanne keeps talking to Saul, and she's freaking him out, and she's saying things in a very strange cadence and very weird phrasing. I think that she might be trying to use hypnosis on Saul in order to get him out of the lighthouse, but it doesn't work because he has the brightness within him now. And so he is trying to like put his foot down and get them out of the lighthouse. Henry, Suzanne, and Jackie all leave, but then Henry returns later to say, Saul, you have to understand, there's something in the lens, and we need that something in the lens. And you know that this place is haunted. You know that there's something off about this. Please, just like let us get to what we need to get to. And Saul is just like totally resistant to it. It's likely that the thing that Henry is trying to get to is now inside Saul. So even if he did like dismantle the lens, he would never get into it. We jump forward to Control. He sees this biologist. They are scared in the middle of the night by this large imposing creature with these human eyes all over it. But then eventually the biologist returns to the ocean. I want to point out that I took notes for this, and a bunch of my notes are just either the biologist or quotation marks the biologist. That's how important the biologist is to this story. Grace, in a uncharacteristic show of support, offers Control her hands, and she gets him up on his feet. And Control is now scared of Ghostbird because of the creature's eyes staring at him. Anytime he looks at Ghostbird, he is reminded of the creature because they share the same eyes. We jump to the middle for the director. The director has this plant that she has found in Area X, and this plant will never die. It cannot be incinerated. It cannot be frozen. Whatever they do, it is always just chugging along. Whitby says, I don't think that what we're looking at is actually a plant. Cheney asks, well, if it's not a plant, why does it look like a plant? And this is not a pipe, right? Sometimes the signifier of something is not the signified that it represents. We are once again running into these limitations of knowledge of what the human mind can know. We see a plant, but it is likely not what the thing actually is. The cell phone becomes very important, and we will get into that a little bit later in the later chapters. But there is this strange quality of the cell phone. It's haunting. If you'll remember back in Authority, when when Control took the cell phone home that night, he heard something scuttling across his roof. So keep in mind that the plant may not be what it appears to be. The cell phone may not be what it appears to be. The owls are not what they seem. The director, in kind of stupor or some kind of fugue state, starts creating this map behind the door in her office that leads to nothing. She makes the map. She makes the sermon so that it is there. Grace and Whitby both kind of assume that the director is unraveling. They talk about, the director talks about Central as kind of the antithesis to Area X. So when you think about Central, you think of this strange, labyrinthine, antiseptic, impersonal, and unknowable organization that has its own methods for doing things, its own motivations for doing things, and none of those things are ever spelled out. Area X is kind of the same, but instead of being impersonal, antiseptic, labyrinthine, it is natural. It is the environment stripped of human interference. It is all of these unknowable and ineffable actions and creatures and things, but it is not the same bureaucratic void that Central is. We jump backwards to Saul. Saul has a tidal apocalyptic vision on the beach. Gloria is sitting at a tidal pool. This echoes what we'll see from the biologist in Annihilation, where the biologist sticks her hand in to try to find this glowing pool out in Rock Bay. Gloria is sitting there observing this tidal pool as a small child. Gloria says that she is going to live with her dad for a little while, and Saul is oh, well, at least it'll be family time. And she's no, I hate my dad. I hate my dad. I hate his girlfriend. This is going to be awful. I don't want to go there. And Saul is don't forget about me, okay? Whatever happens, like, don't forget about me. And Gloria gets picked up by her mom, and she goes to live with her dad, and that is the last time that she sees Saul as he is now. We jump way forward to the Ghost Bird in chapter 16. Ghostbird, Control, and Grace come upon the lighthouse. Ghostbird can now see Control's brightness. She is thinking about like people and their complexities and the way that they are. She says it would be better if I could just like think about people as one thing, but people are always a multitude of things. They are always like, they contain multitudes. Nobody is that simple. They are all like complex individuals with different thoughts and different needs and all of that stuff. Grace throws the biologist's second journal into the lighthouse as they pass by. She says, "You're free of it now." And then they all head down towards the base camp where the topographical anomaly is. We jump forward to the director. The director finds Whitby out in the swamp behind the Southern Reach one day. He has a white mouse, and she asks, "Where did you get that?" And he says, "From the attic." We know from authority that he means the attic of the Southern Reach building. He has been up there making his frightening illustrations. He has been up there like sleeping in one of the shelves, and the director does not know that. Whitby tells her that last night he was working late, and he was in the specimens room, and he saw the plant that she had brought back from Area X, and it blossomed in front of him. And he was observing it for a few minutes, and then before he could like get a camera to take a photograph of it, and before anybody else could come see it, it stopped. It like faded. We know that Saul has kind of been unraveling for a little while. We know that he has not been himself since he came back through from the border of Area X. We know that he may be a doppelganger. So did he see this actual blossoming? I don't know. It's possible that he witnessed it in his mind. It's possible that it did actually blossom, but only for him. It's possible that he was hallucinating it, right? We jump back to Saul. Saul and Charlie meet down at the village bar. This is, I think, some kind of like refurbished rec center with an old piano that they fished out of the ocean. It doesn't seem to be like zoned as a bar. It's just what they have created to be a bar. So they go down to the village bar. They are sitting there as like a band comes on, and Saul smells a too sweet honey smell. We remember from authority that this is the same smell that Control was smelling up until the day that the border shifted. It seems like whenever Area X like moves, or whenever there is a border or something like this, some kind of Area X event, we get this like sickening sweet honey smell. Saul and Charlie talk about their feelings. Saul does not tell Charlie that he loves him. He laments later that he could not say those 3 words, but he does give him a hug before Charlie goes off to fish for the night. Saul sees Henry standing in the corner, and it seems like his vision goes black, except for this vision of Henry standing in the corner. He starts to like block out everything else, the bartender, the band playing, Charlie sitting beside him, and he just sees Henry, and then gradually his vision comes back, and Charlie's like, are you sick again? Like, is everything okay? Saul is like, I'm okay. I will be okay. I just had a vision. And then Henry goes to fish, or not Henry, Charlie goes to fish for the night. We jump forward to chapter 19, Control. Control is suffering from the same like fever that the biologist suffered from in Annihilation. He sees the stars as white rabbits, which we remember was the White Rabbit event from Authority. He sees like streaks across the sky. He is like feeling nauseous. He feels like this thing within him is changing him. He's not comfortable with what's happening to him. He is like going, what's a good, he's like working out this fever that he's got, which is brought on by Area X. Ghostbird again comes and embraces him. She sleeps next to him while he's having this feverish sleep throughout the night. And then in the morning, she gets up and she leaves him lying there. And he kind of like feels this like happiness that she slept beside him, but also the sadness that she didn't stay with him. The three of them go to the tower. It is Grace, Control, and Ghostbird. Control says, Grace, stay up here. You have a gun. If anything happens, if anything tries to come in, shoot it. If like we're not back in so much time, go ahead and like leave us behind because we're probably lost. And he's expecting Grace to argue with him because that's what Grace does. But both Grace and Ghostbird are on board with this. So Grace stays behind with her rifle. Ghostbird and Control climb down the steps into the tower. Chapter 20, we get the director again. She talks with the biologist. She is doing the intake with the biologist, and the biologist brings up that thing about people being animals. The director is like, what would happen if you had to hurt somebody in order to finish the mission? And the biologist is like, if it's for the mission, I would do that. We get a little bit of backstory for the biologist, which is weird at this point because we've kind of like finished with the biologist at this point, I think. But we get this small sample that back when she was stationed at Rock Bay, there was a string of like small eco-terrorism events where people who were tormenting animals or like dumping things in the ocean, they would get attacked by someone wearing a mask. Was this the biologist? Did the biologist do like some light eco-terrorism? We can't be sure because it never says within the book, but it seems like it would match up. We learn a little bit about the linguist who was supposed to come on the expedition with the director. She was Lowry's plant. She was Lowry's favorite. She was undergoing hypnotic suggestion from Lowry. And so we expect if she were to have made it into Area X, she would have been Lowry's plant on the expedition, but that didn't end up happening. We get to find out that the director has cancer at this point. This is something that was said in the movie. The director's reason for going on the expedition was because she had cancer. But this is something that we have not had confirmed for us, I don't think, unless I missed it in Authority. But the director has cancer, and that is part of what is driving her to like want to go on the expedition. It's part of what is driving her to like want to combat Area X and learn about what she can learn and maybe see Saul again. She instructs Grace to look into the Seance and Science Brigade, and Grace looks into it for a little while, and she comes back and she says, I found a connection between Jack Severance, Control's grandfather, and the SNSB, but it's light. It's just this one small charge line, and it has the letters SB, and I think that it may be like a coded message that Jack Severance was involved with the Seance and Science Brigade. We will get confirmation later that it's true. He was involved with the Seance and Science Brigade. We already have an inkling of that because Jackie was there, but it's good to have confirmation. Chapter 21. This is my favorite chapter in the book. So Saul is sitting at the village bar, and all of a sudden, shit gets weird. The person playing piano has started playing like hard and won't stop. Their fingers are starting to bleed, and they're rubbing their blood over the piano keys. It's very gruesome. Other people within the bar all seem to be like losing their consciousness. They can't walk anymore, and so they're crawling across the floor. Some of them are like spouting blood from themselves. Very gruesome scene. One of my favorites in the series, probably. I wrote down in my notes the massacre at the bar. I just really enjoyed this one. We jump back into the future with Ghostbird. Ghostbird she turns to Control. She asks him, "Will you please stay here? I'll go look at the crawler myself. You don't have to do it." And Control says, "No, I'm coming with you. I'm heading down the steps. You can't stop me." She heads down the steps and she sees the crawler for the first time. She doesn't see it the same way that the director and the biologist saw it. The biologist saw the old lightkeeper in the picture. The director saw Saul Evans, who she knew from her childhood. Ghostbird, who is probably immune because of the brightness or because she is a doppelganger, sees a kind of like alien avatar. She has, I wanted to read this passage out. She saw or felt deep within the cataclysm like a rain of comets that had annihilated an entire biosphere remote from Earth, witnessed how one made organism had fragmented and dispersed, each minute each minute part undertaking a long and perilous passage through spaces between, black and formless, punctuated by sudden light as they came to rest, scattered and lost, emerging only to be buried, inert, in the glass of a lighthouse lens. And how, when brought out of dormancy, the wire tripped, how it had, best as it could, regenerated, begun to perform a vast and preordained function, one compromised by time and context, by the terrible truth that the species that had given Area X its purpose was gone. She saw the membranes of Area X, this machine, this creature, saw the white rabbits leaping into the border, disappearing and coming out into another place, the leviathans, the ghosts, watching from beyond. All of this in fragments through taste or smell or senses she didn't entirely understand. So we finally get our answer of what Area X is. It is a created organism. It is some kind of machine that was created for a purpose. But that purpose no longer exists because of this great cataclysm. So we have gotten our answer, but it is raising more questions. What happened to the alien race? What was its function? Let's see if we can find out. While Ghostbird is like interacting with the crawler has like halos of orbs that are like showing Gracebird visions. She turns around and she sees Grace on the stairs, and Grace has her rifle and she shoots Ghostbird through the back, but Ghostbird isn't exactly human anymore, and so it doesn't actually faze her. And so Ghostbird says, "Get out of here," and Grace runs up the steps, and she realizes that Control has also left somewhere, and she theorizes that he's either gone down the stairs towards the light or he's gone up the stairs towards Grace. We jump back to the director and we get a confrontation with Lowry, and this is a really good scene as well. The director goes out to Lowry's recreation of Area X. She gets him to show her around. He shows her to the lighthouse. He shows her down to the beach. And while they're down on the beach, she talks about the cell phone. She's like, "Hey, this is your cell phone, wasn't it?" And he's like, "Oh, no, not mine." It's like, if you had that cell phone in Area X, it's possible that you might have communicated with something while you were in Area X. He's like, "Oh, no, that would never happen." And she brings up like SNSD as Jack Severance's side project. And Lowry kind of confirms that. He's like, "Yeah, that was one of Jack's. It was just like a small side project." Jack thought that if there was any truth in like this mumbo jumbo, it could be good to get it. But also we could just implant somebody there and they could keep an eye out on it in case it ever grew into a militia. So it was kind of like pulling two strings. And I don't remember if it was Jack Severance or if it was his father, Control's father in Authority. There was a truism that Control had, which was like, never do anything for just one reason. Always have like multiple reasons for doing something. And so it's possible that like Lowry is telling the truth here, that Jack saw a future payoff from the SNSB, and also that he thought that if it ever changed into a cult or a militia or anything like that, he would have somebody stationed there to stop it. The director asks about two people named Henry and Suzanne, and the Lowry says that he never saw those names in the files, but that doesn't mean that they weren't there. Were Henry and Suzanne part of the SNSB, or was that just a cover story that they gave to Saul and Gloria? We might never know. It seems unlikely that if there were records of the people who were in the SNSB, that Henry and Suzanne would not be among them, but it's possible that those records were also buried. Finally, the director gets Lowry to admit that the cell phone that she brought back from Area X was his cell phone, and she asks him, hey, do you think that the Seance and Science Brigade might have had something to do with creating Area X? And he goes, fuck no, I would have killed them if that happened. And she says, did you receive any communications from Area X? And he's kind of shifty about it. So it's possible that he was communicating with Area X through this cell phone somehow. We jump back to Saul. Saul goes to the lighthouse after the bar massacre. He finds Henry. He finds Henry dead in the trapdoor beneath the lighthouse, and he finds a living Henry there as well. So this living Henry is probably a doppelganger Henry. He also has a vision of a stack of journals, but when he like focuses, the journals disappear. So this is a vision of the future. He sees in his mind this blossom, which is similar to the flower that he saw, this plant beneath the lighthouse, that Whitby will eventually see blossom as well. He and Henry start fighting. Henry is apparently dragging him to the edge of the lighthouse, the same one that the director will eventually leap from in Annihilation. Henry is begging him to stop. Hey, please don't do this, while he is pushing Saul over the edge, which is weird. Is Saul actually the one throwing Henry over the edge and Henry is trying to stop it? Is Henry like not in control of his own body anymore? We don't get a clear answer of like who is in control here, what is happening here, but both Saul and Henry go over the edge, and they collapse on the landing beneath the lighthouse, just as the director will later. In chapter 25, we go back to Control. Control goes down the stairs by the crawler. The crawler shows him a vision of his mother, but his mother no longer has any power over him after they departed in Authority. He heads down to this light beneath the tower. He sees this doorway made of light, and he walks up to it, and he thinks about like Area X for a little bit. He thinks about Ghostbird. He thinks about his mother. He thinks about Grace. Then he throws himself into the light. We have a flashback to the director for chapter 26. She has the cell phone in a box in her home. She has been bringing home her notes and like keeping them in shoe boxes and kind of writing notes on receipt paper, the same that the Control saw in Authority when he was trying to like reconstruct her mindset. And the cell phone, she hears this noise in her kitchen, and it sounds like some creature is scuttling in her kitchen. It sounds like something is making a lot of noise. And when she comes around the corner, all she sees is this cell phone sitting on the floor. So we see a cell phone. It's probably not a cell phone. She takes the cell phone and her notes out to the grill in the backyard, and she just like burns them. She lights everything on fire, but it's raining, so the rain puts out the fire. The cell phone appears to be fine. The notes appear to be fine. She decides that she's going to stop investigating Area X, and she's just going to go on the expedition. So she has Grace shut down all of the investigations into the Science and Science Brigade. She stops her investigation into Lowry. She puts everything on hold because she is going into the expedition. So there's nothing really that she can learn anymore. She goes to this bowling alley bar that she's been going to throughout the novel, and she is talking with one of her friends, a realtor, and she asks, like, have you ever seen anybody like burn down a house? And the realtor's like, oh yeah, and she starts telling stories, and partway through the story, the director just realizes, you're not a realtor. You're not a realtor at all. She just kind of walks off, which is a strange interaction, but it's strange that she had that connection as well. And another one of the bar patrons comes out and he says, you're correct. She got fired over a year ago. But you know, it's embarrassing losing your job. It's embarrassing not having a job in society. And so she's just kind of been keeping up appearances. And the director says, it's okay. I'm not actually a long haul trucker either. That might be the only real friend that Cynthia has ever had in this novel. We jump back to the lighthouse keeper, Saul. He and Henry are both alive on the beach. Why are they alive? It seems like something to do with Area X. Saul sees leviathans out in the sea. He sees these strange creatures coming into land. He thinks about Charlie fishing out in the ocean, and he decides that he needs to get as far away from Charlie as he possibly can before whatever is about to happen happens. So he gets in his truck and he drives away, and he has visions of the biologist, he has visions of Lowry, and he has visions of things yet to come. And then he laments not being able to tell Charlie that he loves him, and then he collapses onto the floor, and then he is changed. Just like Area X will eventually change others, Saul is changed into the tower and the crawler and the sermon. He undergoes annihilation and he undergoes transformation, and this is probably one of the most heartbreaking parts of the entire story. We jump into the future. This is the farthest point forward that we will get in the Area X trilogy. Ghostbird has noticed that there is a change in Area X following Control's leaping into the light. She doesn't know what the change is, but she thinks that maybe somehow he has stopped the machine. She and Grace are like walking across this barren landscape that is now completely devoid of any like human civilization. They find the old Southern Reach building. It has crumbled on one side, and inside they only see darkness. They decide that they are not going into the old Southern Reach building, and then they kind of like walk off as friends, throwing rocks in front of them in case there is like an invisible barrier that they're about to walk into. And this is where we leave the expeditions. This is where we leave Grace. This is where we leave Ghostbird. So we now have an ending for the original biologist. We have an ending for Control, and we have an ending for Ghostbird as well. The final chapter, and this final chapter shares the same designation as the prologue, 000X. The director, she is about to go into the expedition into Area X, and she knows that the linguist is freaking out. And so she goes and she sits with the linguist and she says, if you want to turn back now, you can. I'm not going to stop you. And the linguist runs out. And the novel ends with the director's letter to Saul, and it's a very it's a very touching letter. It's a heartfelt send off to Saul, and she says that she never forgot him. And so, thinking about like memory and the memory of people as like a theme throughout the trilogy, we've got the biologist remembering her husband. We have Control remembering his father and his grandfather and his mother. And now we have the director remembering Saul. And so this idea of like human connections being important and being like in certain ways more real than the advancement of knowledge, or in some ways the way that we feel about each other and these connections that we make and these relationships that we form being like more real than knowledge, or in many ways like ineffable but still more tangible than the sum of what we can know. Yeah, that's my analysis for book 3 of the Southern Reach trilogy. We are not done yet. Hold on just a second. I did not realize when I decided to reread the Southern Reach trilogy that there is actually a 4th book. This is Absolution by Jeff VanderMeer. This is the 4th book in the Southern Reach series. And so we will be going through that one next because I have not read that at all. And so it will be completely fresh. We will see if these themes of like memories of people being important and the limitations of knowing being important and these transformations of people and the environment and all of this stuff, we will see if this will continue into book 4. So yeah, I'm excited to get into that one with you. After that, I will be getting into my 100 novels project. I will make an announcement video. I will put up the links, all of that stuff once it comes time to do that. But for now, we will be going through Absolution. So that'll be your next project for next month. I'm going to get out of here. Thank you all for joining me for another night of Talks About Books for probably far too long. I love you. I'll see you in the next video. Good night.